prioritize me over your mother. Get to the family gathering now.
His angry voice echoed through the quiet funeral hall. Everyone looked at me in surprise. Please, John, just let me say my final goodbye to my mother.
No, get here now. If you're not here in an hour, I'll divorce you.
Divorce is something I would welcome. However, I didn't want to worry my father, who is already grieving the loss of his wife.
You hear me? 1 hour.
Wait, hold on. The call abruptly ended. As I held my head in frustration, my father spoke up.
What was that?
His body was trembling.
Has he always treated you like this?
Well,
Yes, Dad always acts high and mighty towards Mom.
Emma spoke up for me. Hearing this, my father's expression turned from anger to a stony calm.
I see. Then, let's give him what he wants.
He said that coldly. My name is Laura, and I'm a 48-year-old homemaker. Right now, I live with my husband, John, just the two of us. I met John back when we were students.
Hey, I like you, Laura. Will you go out with me?
He confessed his feelings to me when we were high school classmates, and that's when we started dating. We continued our relationship through college, and when we became working adults, we decided to get married.
I'll cherish you forever, Laura. So, will you marry me?
John proposed to me like that. Then, at his urging, I decided to become a homemaker instead of getting a job. Fortunately, I love doing housework and don't have any particular hobbies, so I don't spend much money. John always looked satisfied with that.
Laura, you're really the ideal wife.
Just hearing that made me very happy. Soon after, I got pregnant with our daughter, Emma. Both John and I, as well as our parents, were overjoyed.
Mom, let me help.
My daughter, Emma, grew up to be a kind child who would follow me around, trying to help. Gradually, her kindness extended beyond me to others as well. If she saw someone in trouble, she would actively offer help. She had a strong sense of justice too, often confronting bullies head-on and coming home covered in dirt. You were really a tomboy back then.
I kind of remember. Sorry for causing so much trouble.
My proud daughter, Emma, grew up and left home when she got married. Since then, it's just been John and me. One day, while I was cleaning as usual, the intercom rang. Oh my God, here we go again. I checked the monitor and, as expected, it was John's mother, Mary. I sighed as I opened the front door.
How long does it take to open the door? You're really slow.
Mary complained as soon as the door opened and walked in. She marched into the living room, turned on the TV, and asked for coffee. I sighed again at the sight. I've always been troubled by Mary's unannounced visits.
You're still bad at cleaning and doing laundry. You're really a useless daughter-in-law.
And she always complains about my housekeeping. This has been going on for years. Mary dotes on John and sees me, her daughter-in-law, as an enemy. That's why she constantly criticizes me.
Maybe it's because you can only give birth to daughters.
Mary is also not happy that I've only had Emma.
It's really a disgrace not to have a male heir.
Even though there's nothing specific to inherit, Mary uses this to berate me. I suffer from secondary infertility. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't have another child. Mary nags about this constantly. I always listen to her snide remarks in silence. I used to argue back.
Shut up. Just listen to me.
But she'd just yell and throw things at me, so I started keeping quiet. Honestly, I don't want to let her into the house. However, if I don't, she rings the intercom repeatedly and starts shouting. In the end, I feel bad for the neighbors and let her in.
You married into this family. You have to obey us.
Then Mary stays for hours before finally leaving. She's finally gone. I sigh with relief, only to make eye contact with a neighbor through the front door.
Isn't that John's mother? Are you okay?
Oh yes, I'm fine. I'm sorry for the noise.
It's okay. Don't worry about it.
Kind neighbors sometimes listen to my complaints or visit when Mary is here to help me out. Mary cares about appearances, so she doesn't harass me when others are around.
If you need anything, just let me know. Your granddad helped me a lot.
This house is built on land that belonged to my grandfather, and my father built the house.
If you make a copy of the key without permission, I'll kick you out.
The house is in my father's name, and he made it clear to John that his parents can't have a key. With the support of my neighbors and parents, I managed to maintain some peace of mind. I really wish John would take my side. Mary came over again.
So what?
I wish she'd tell us before she comes, and she always complains about my housekeeping. Can you please tell her to stop? John made a face. Here we go again.
Why? Mom's doing it for you. If you can't get along, it's because you're not trying hard enough. Just get used to it.
John never takes my side. Being doted on by Mary, John has some outdated ideas. He believes that as the husband, he and his family come first, and he shouldn't do any housework or childcare. He has this old-fashioned, male chauvinist mindset.
Anyway, it's all your fault. Don't drag me into your problems.
John doesn't really listen to me. Seeing him storm off to his room, I sighed again.
Hey, Mom. Can I come over sometime?
One day, I got a call from Emma. Of course. The next day, Emma came over. Why did you come over on a weekday? Your dad's not here.
I didn't come to see Dad. I came to see you.
Emma isn't very close to John. On the other hand, John dotes on Emma, but she always seems annoyed by it.
Because it was you who really paid attention to me. Besides, I can't like people who bully my favorite mom.
Emma has always cared about me. So what brings you here today?
Mom, have you thought about divorcing Dad?
I froze at Emma's words. Seeing my reaction, Emma started to speak with a wry smile.
You don't talk about yourself because you don't want to trouble Grandpa and Grandma, right?
That was true. At first, I thought about consulting my parents. However, my mother has a chronic illness and has been in and out of the hospital for years. So I hesitated to bring it up with them.
Now both my husband and I are earning enough, and we can support you. So why don't you get a divorce from Dad and live together?
Her words made me pause and think. Certainly, there was Mary, who enjoyed tormenting me, and her husband, Kevin, who acted like he didn't notice. And then there was John, who never helped me, and whom I had finally stopped loving. I wanted to be free from them. Are you sure? Won't it be a burden for you?
It'll be totally fine. Let's live together.
Emma said with a smile. Her words made me feel relieved. However, I knew I couldn't get a divorce right away. I decided to take my time and prepare for it. But those plans were suddenly disrupted. What? Mom is hospitalized? My mother had to be hospitalized again. This time, it seemed quite serious. Hearing my father's distressed voice, I pleaded with John. I want to go to my parents' house.
What? No way. If you go back home, who's going to do the housework?
But this time it might be really serious.
No. You're my wife now, so cut ties with your family.
John was adamantly against me going back to my parents' house. Since getting married, I could only visit my parents once a year. And that was only because Emma begged to go see my family. As I was wondering what to do, I got a call from Emma.
Grandpa told me about Grandma.
Yes, but
I get it. Let me talk to Dad.
Emma seemed to understand without me having to say everything. I handed my phone to John without hesitation. John initially looked suspicious, but his expression changed to a smile when he realized it was Emma.
If Emma's asking, I guess I'll allow it.
After talking to Emma for a bit, John reluctantly gave his permission. I quickly packed and got into Emma's car when she came to pick me up, heading to my parents' house for the first time in a while.
Really? Dad makes me so mad.
Emma said that angrily while driving. I smiled wryly, but I couldn't stop worrying about my parents.
Mom, you might not want to think about this now, but you should seriously consider the future.
I nodded at her words. Even though my mother was in danger, John was only thinking about himself. I simply couldn't live with him anymore. I resolved to go through with the divorce. When we rushed to the hospital, my mother was already unconscious, and my father looked completely exhausted by her side.
Oh, Laura and Emma, you came.
Dad,
I knew this day would come eventually.
my gentle father had always been concerned about me. Seeing him so weak, I regretted not coming sooner. I'll stay here for a while. I'll be with you, Dad.
I've taken some time off work. I'll do whatever I can, Grandpa.
Thank you both.
After that, I spent my days taking care of my mom and supporting my dad. Even though I was taking care of her, she was unconscious, so all I could do was talk to her. So what I focused on was supporting my father. Then the inevitable moment came.
When are you coming back?
I got a message from John. Checking my notifications, I saw several messages. Apparently, Mary was doing the housework while I was away.
There's a family gathering coming up, so come back soon.
My mom is critically ill, so I can't go. When I replied, John called me.
Enough of this. Not only are you abandoning your duties as a wife, but now you're refusing to attend the family gathering? This is ridiculous.
I'm not joking. What is this gathering anyway? Apparently, one of his relatives was getting married. They were gathering to celebrate, but it was a relative whose name I didn't even recognize. I couldn't leave my parents to go back for someone like that. I can't. I want to stay with my parents.
No, that's an order.
With that, John hung up immediately. I sighed deeply.
Mom, Grandma.
Emma came rushing in. That day, my mother passed away. Soon after, her funeral was held. Despite her chronic illness, my mother was kind and knowledgeable. She was loved by many, and not only our relatives, but also many others came to pay their respects.
Dad didn't come, did he?
No, he didn't. I had informed John about the funeral. However, he chose not to attend. As the funeral proceeded quietly, my phone rang with a call from John. Normally, I would have stepped outside to take the call, but seeing who it was, I gasped. John had specifically called me. As I was debating what to do, Emma, who was beside me, seemed to have an idea and gave me instructions.
Put it on speaker.
Hearing that, I guessed what Emma had in mind. She likely wanted to expose John's behavior to everyone present. So I deliberately answered the call on speaker in front of everyone. Hey, I'm at a funeral right now.
What are you doing? All the other relatives are gathered here.
John yelled, and I instinctively fell silent. People around me looked curiously, but when I put my finger to my lips to signal for silence, They seemed to understand, and the room fell quiet.
Today is a family gathering. Get here now and help Mom.
Don't be unreasonable. It's my mother's funeral.
Prioritize me over your mother. Get to the family gathering now.
His angry voice echoed through the quiet funeral hall. Everyone looked irritated at John's incredibly selfish remarks. Please, John, just let me say my final goodbye to my mother.
No. Get here now. If you're not here in an hour, I'll divorce you.
Divorce is something I would welcome. However, I didn't want to worry my father, who is already grieving the loss of his wife.
You hear me? 1 hour.
Wait, hold on. The call abruptly ended.
What was that?
As I held my head in frustration, my father spoke up. His body was trembling.
Has he always treated you like this?
Well,
Yes, Dad always acts high and mighty towards Mom.
Emma spoke up for me. Hearing this, my father's expression turned from anger to a stony calm.
I see. Then let's give him what he wants.
He said that coldly. An hour later, still in our funeral attire, my relatives and I arrived at John's family home.
You're late. What?
When I rang the doorbell, Mary appeared with an angry expression. However, seeing everyone gathered behind me, her body stiffened in shock. Ignoring her, we all entered John's family home. As we moved toward the noise, I saw men laughing crudely, likely drinking. Meanwhile, the women, seeing us, stepped aside in silence, their expressions surprised. Sorry to keep you waiting.
You're late. What the?
John turned around at my voice and froze. His expression was just like Mary's. The relatives, who had been lively, were surprised to see us, all dressed in suits.
What's with the outfits? And why is it not just you, Laura?
You told me to come immediately, even though it was during my mother's funeral, so here I am.
Since there was something more important than my wife's funeral, we all decided to come.
We smiled at John. But no one's eyes were smiling. Noticing this, John mumbled and looked away.
Well, that's...
All right then. Would you mind telling us why you called Laura away? What right did you have to take her away from the important moment of saying her final goodbye to her beloved mother?
Though my father was smiling, the pressure he exerted was terrifying.
Well, Laura is my wife, so...
So being a wife means you can do anything to her. Pushing all the housework and childcare onto her. Allowing your mother to harass her. And forbidding her from visiting our house. Is that what you think a wife is?
John tried to speak, but my father quickly countered. Eventually, John fell silent.
What do you think my precious Laura is to you?
My father yelled at John. John flinched and froze, letting out a small gasp.
Stop it. You're scaring John.
Mary rushed in. While she glared at my father, he returned her gaze coldly.
It's only natural for a wife to obey her husband's family.
What era do you think you're living in? Human rights are defined by law, and your statement is in direct contradiction to those laws. Are you aware of that?
My father immediately countered Mary's words. Clearly, he was extremely angry about the situation. Seeing my father's rare display of anger made me feel a bit relieved. However, I didn't show it and kept glaring at John.
Besides, if you say that, I can't come home either.
Emma said that as she stood next to my father.
You will always tell me to come home once in a while, but you tell Mom she can't visit her parents. What's that about?
That's...
You should have come to Grandma's funeral, Dad. Instead, you're here drinking. I've hated that about you since I was a kid.
John looked shocked at Emma's words. He never imagined that Emma disliked him. Then my relatives started chiming in, calling him insensitive and the worst family. Even about half of John's relatives began to look at his family with disdain.
No way. Emma hates me.
John, pull yourself together.
Though Mary said that, John was already in a panic. Seeing this, we left the house. After sending my mother off peacefully, I returned to the house one more time. I needed to pack my belongings.
Are you sure you want to come with me?
Of course. I decided to divorce John and move back home. And I planned to live quietly with my father.
Laura,
Just as I finished packing, John barged in. Behind him was Mary. It seemed that Kevin was not around. He still avoided these situations, as usual. Perfect timing. Here, sign this. I handed John the completed divorce papers. Seeing them, he turned pale and began to apologize.
I need you, Laura. Please reconsider.
No, I have no love left for you.
Wait, Laura. We'll forgive you for everything. So you should forgive John too.
Something snapped inside me at Mary's words. Who do you think you are to forgive anyone?
What?
I don't need your forgiveness for anything. Mary flinched as I suddenly yelled. Ignoring her, I began to let out everything I had been holding in. Even though I repeatedly told her to call ahead, she always showed up unannounced, and I hated it. Every time she complained about my housekeeping, it made me uncomfortable. Whenever I went to Mary's house, she treated me like a maid and never gave me a break. I directed all my pent-up frustrations at John and Mary. Why on earth should I need your forgiveness?
Well,
If anything, it's you who should be asking for forgiveness. You should be saying, I'm sorry for staying at your house for hours without notice, complaining about everything, and treating you like a maid. Mary fell silent at my words. Well, maybe it was because my father was standing next to me, glaring with a cold smile.
John, I can't leave my precious Laura in your care any longer. Get out of this house.
What?
The house is in my name, so it's you who needs to leave.
John turned pale, perhaps having forgotten this fact.
Get out now.
My father ordered John and Mary out.
Wait. Laura, please reconsider.
Wait a minute. Before you leave, just sign the divorce papers. John looked hopeful when I stopped him, but his expression quickly fell when he heard my next words. Finally accepting it, John signed the divorce papers. I'm so glad the divorce is finalized.
Yes, truly.
As my father and I shared a laugh, we heard commotion outside. We looked out the window to see what was happening.
Why did Dad leave us behind?
It seemed they had come in a car driven by Kevin. Apparently, Kevin left while they were arguing with us. After some more commotion, the police, called by our neighbors, took John and Mary away. They're noisy to the end. Watching this, I muttered. Then, after everything quieted down, I took my belongings and returned to my parents' house. Oh, it's a message from Kevin. When I checked my phone after returning home, there was a message from Kevin.
I'm sorry I couldn't protect you, Laura.
The message contained an apology. Kevin had left early to buy time for the women in John's family to escape. Apparently, some of the women had stayed behind at John's house under the guise of cleaning up. It seems that our arrival woke up the women.
So, they all escaped while Kevin was buying time.
It turned out that Kevin had been marginalized in the household due to Mary's schemes. Everyone had been ignoring him. This time, Kevin had taken his revenge on Mary. I might have misunderstood Kevin.
No, it's true he didn't protect you. So don't feel sorry for him. Instead, let's be glad we're free of that family.
I nodded in agreement with my father's words. Apparently, John and Mary were in a difficult situation. Since the women had successfully escaped, their husbands were now holding a grudge against John and Mary. And Kevin himself divorced Mary. The two of them were shunned by all the relatives, and Kevin kicked them out of the house, forcing them to move into a cheap apartment. It's going to be tough for them from now on.
What did you do to Dad?
I had taken a significant portion of John's savings through property division and compensation for emotional abuse. Additionally, I had informed his company about his behavior. John would occasionally bring his colleagues to the house. John had old-fashioned views in the worst way. As a result, he would sometimes forcibly bring his subordinates to the house. One of these subordinates had given me their contact information in case I ever needed help, and I enlisted their help this time. As a result, John was in a very uncomfortable position at work. And that's not all.
What else?
It turned out John had been emotionally abusing his subordinates as well. When they learned about our divorce, they came forward with evidence and sued him.
Wow, that's really the worst.
Yes, and he ended up getting fired and had to pay compensation to his subordinates. So, John had no choice but to move into a cheap apartment. Now, he's working multiple part-time jobs, barely making ends meet. Mary could work too, but since she's always been a homemaker, she's just living off John's earnings. Because of this, John is under a lot of stress. According to a subordinate who saw him in town, he looked haggard and frustrated, kicked a trash can, and was severely reprimanded by the police.
He really hit rock bottom. I'm so glad we cut ties before this baby was born.
Emma was at my parents' house to announce her pregnancy. Seeing her lovingly pat her belly, I was also glad to have finalized the divorce. Emma's husband was also there, currently keeping my father company.
So, can I have the baby here?
Of course. I'm already looking forward to the birth of my grandchild. Knowing that a great-grandchild is on the way, my father eagerly brought out drinks and started drinking with Emma's husband, though I'll need to stop him soon before he overdoes it. John and Mary, with their selfish actions, won't even get to see their grandchild and great-grandchild respectively, let alone hold it. I think that's the biggest punishment for John, who doted on Emma. By the way, I informed Kevin about Emma's pregnancy.
I don't deserve to meet them. Please focus on taking care of Emma.
Given Kevin's words, I doubt we'll see him.
By the way, Mom, have you thought about marrying again?
Not yet. I just got divorced after all. As I answered Emma, one man came to mind. His name is James. He's the subordinate who gave me his contact information, and he's been contacting me frequently since my divorce.
That look on your face. Do you have someone in mind?
Emma asked with a mischievous smile. She managed to get the whole story out of me.
James, I think I know him.
What?
Sometimes, when I woke up in the middle of the night, he'd apologize and say, "Sorry for waking you up."
Emma looked nostalgic. Apparently, whenever James came over, he was always considerate of Emma, who was just a child at the time. And he always seemed to be watching over me.
I used to wish James was my dad instead.
Really?
I think it's time for you to find your own happiness, Mom.
Her words made me pause and think, and then I nodded. Right after that, James invited me to dinner, and Emma and I shared a laugh. My own happiness, maybe I can find it this time. Thinking that, I couldn't help but smile. A little early, aren't I? A year later, I arrived early for a meeting and wondered how to pass the time.
Laura,
What? I turned around at the voice to see a disheveled John. He stumbled towards me.
it's been really tough since then. I realize now how important you are to me.
I see, I replied coldly, keeping my distance from John.
And I heard that Emma had a baby.
Hearing that, I felt a surge of anger, wondering how the news had leaked. Emma is currently busy taking care of her newborn. I can't let John disrupt her life. So what? It has nothing to do with you.
Yes, it does. If you and I get back together.
That's out of the question.
At that moment, someone put an arm around my shoulder. Looking up, I saw James glaring at John.
You, James? My subordinate?
Not anymore. I'm your former subordinate, and I'm now in a serious relationship with Laura.
John's face fell in despair at James' words. A year ago, when James invited me to dinner, I accepted, and we met. He confessed that he had fallen in love with me at first sight and had been harboring feelings for me ever since. After that, we decided to start dating.
This can't be.
I will make Laura happy this time, and I will cherish Emma's child as my own grandchild. You no longer have a place here.
With James' firm declaration, John stumbled away. He would never appear in front of me again.
So, Laura,
Yes,
will you marry me?
James asked, looking a bit shy. I nodded, feeling a bit shy myself. So we're engaged now.
Wow, congratulations.
That's wonderful. It has always been my and my wife's wish for Laura to be happy.
When I reported the news at home, my father and Emma congratulated us. Feeling a bit embarrassed, I thanked them.
Are you going to have a wedding?
No, we're both a bit too old for that. Besides, you can't participate with a baby, and it would be hard on you, Dad. They looked a bit disappointed. I smiled softly at that. Instead, we're planning a trip. We'll be away for a while.
I see. Leave Grandpa to me.
Then, I guess I'll take care of the great-grandchild.
Smiling, I nodded at the two of them. I looked at Emma and my father. Thanks to you both, I'm very happy now. Thank you so much. At my words, the two of them exchanged glances. My father was the first to speak.
On the contrary, it's because of you that your mother and I were happy.
Same here. I'm who I am today because you raised me with so much love.
I expressed my gratitude to them once more. Shortly after, I married James.
It's like a dream having Laura as my wife.
James's expression reminded me of John's when he confessed his love. But James was different. John always looked straight ahead, never at me. In contrast, James looked right into my eyes. Even such small things made me smile. A few years later, my father joined my mother, and now I live peacefully with James. Unlike with John, we talk about everything and respect each other. It's a feeling I cherish deeply.
Is Emma coming today?
Yes, she is. Her child is already 6.
Time flies. I always want to buy her everything when she calls me Grandpa.
I couldn't help but laugh at James's words. I understood the feeling well, because I feel the same way. I think Emma might scold you if you buy too much.
And you're any different?
As we laughed together, we heard cheerful voices from the entrance. Smiling, we headed over.
Mom, Dad, hi.
Emma greeted us with a smile. Moments later, our 6-year-old grandchild jumped into James's arms, making him stagger.
Oh, such a little tomboy.
She takes after you. Emma let out a dissatisfied sound at my words. When I burst out laughing, everyone else did too. I thought to myself that I wanted to protect these smiles forever.
Thank you,
Kevin said to me in a slightly raspy voice. It was the first time I felt like I had heard Kevin's real voice since he and his parents, David and Jennifer, moved in with us. It had been several months since Kevin started coming to my workplace after school. Until then, our interactions were limited to him quietly eating a burger and then leaving. But this time, Kevin looked me in the eye when he spoke. It made me happy to realize that such a small thing could feel so significant, showing how much distance there had been between us. After he finished eating, he sat for more than 10 minutes, which made me a bit puzzled. As the number of customers gradually began to decrease, I took the opportunity to speak to Kevin. My shift ends in 30 minutes. Want to walk home together? Kevin looked up at me with a surprised expression, then slowly nodded. When I finished my shift and stepped out of the store, Kevin was standing there. I lightly patted Kevin's slightly hunched back, and we started walking together. I was pushing my bike, and Kevin was walking slightly behind me. Walking alongside Kevin, I couldn't help but reflect on how tall he had grown.
hamburgers. They're always so good. I start craving them in the afternoon.
Kevin said that suddenly. I had to resist the urge to look directly at his face. Come anytime. I was so happy that I almost cried. As I tried to suppress the smile forming on my lips, Kevin stopped walking. He looked at me with a determined expression, then finally spoke.
Grandma,
The sunset was turning the sky a deep red. With the sun backlighting him, I couldn't see Kevin's face clearly.
I'm really sorry for everything.
What? What do you mean? With an expression that looked like he was about to cry, Kevin began to explain why he had never tried to talk to me before. My name is Ashley, and I'm 62 years old. I'm enjoying a peaceful retirement with my gentle husband, James, who is 7 years older than me. James worked tirelessly like a horse after founding his construction company, growing it into a small business that supports many employees. In his younger days, he was known for his somewhat arrogant attitude and aggressive business deals, often breaking industry norms. Despite his forceful management style, everyone who knew James respected him because they knew he was thinking about the future of his employees and the company. Although he could have stayed on as an executive after retiring, James handed over the reins to his capable subordinates and gracefully stepped down.
It's the younger generation that will shape the future.
Personally, I think the saying "a busy husband is a good husband" worked out well, as I preferred to have the house to myself during the weekdays. It's not that I dislike James. I just believe we need some personal space, so I decided to work at a local burger joint. James had never done any housework before because he was always busy working. However, at some point, he suddenly started cleaning without me even asking. While I'm out working part-time, he seems to enjoy cleaning the kitchen and bathroom. He buys new cleaning products and tools, and then proudly explains them to me.
This cleaner is great at removing dirt, and this one smells really good too.
In his younger days, James always had a stern expression and a tough demeanor, so it amuses me that he has become gentle and tidy with age. James doesn't seem to notice his transformation and happily hums while scrubbing the bathroom. I enjoyed cooking and serving customers at the burger joint, and every day felt fulfilling and happy. One day, I had a day off, and James was organizing the shed on our property in the afternoon. A van honked softly as it drove into our yard. Ouch! Startled by the sound of the car, I cried out while watering the potted plants by the front door. A cactus pricked the back of my hand, and as I rubbed the painful spot, a man got out of the van and walked over, laughing.
"What are you doing, Mom? It's been a while."
"David, you're back so suddenly. Why didn't you let us know you're coming?" I opened my mouth to give my son David a piece of my mind for showing up unannounced. But then his wife, Jennifer, and their son, Kevin, also got out of the van. Really, if you're bringing the whole family, you should at least give us a heads up. I haven't prepared anything.
"It's a surprise, and we'll be staying here for a while."
I was momentarily speechless, but Jennifer walked over with a smile.
Ashley, we'll be in your care for a while. Here, I brought some snacks. Let's all have some.
Jennifer handed me a crumpled paper bag. "Thanks. How have you been?" I exchanged the usual pleasantries, and then noticed Kevin standing a bit away, looking bored at the ground. "Anyway, come on inside." I hurried to start making coffee.
"I'm so tired."
Yeah, me too.
The three of them who had come back home were relaxing in the living room, chatting. Just as I finished preparing the coffee, James returned from organizing the shed, looking surprised.
Oh, David, Jennifer, and Kevin, you've grown so much.
James happily sat next to Kevin, patting him on the shoulder. Kevin, feeling a bit shy, just nodded and shook his head slightly while looking down. Kevin is 14 after all. Teen boys don't talk much at this age. It had been years since David last came back home. Due to the recent illness outbreak, he probably avoided visiting elderly parents. Over time, he stopped coming, and even after things settled down, he never visited, and we gradually stopped questioning it. "So, what do you mean by staying for a while?"
"Just what it sounds like. We gave up our apartment and are moving in from today."
David said that calmly while eating the snacks they brought. "We have plenty of spare rooms in our house, so it's true we can accommodate them. We also have guest bedding ready, so David probably thought there wouldn't be any problem with their sudden arrival." After resting and drinking coffee for a while, David started bringing in their luggage from the van. They had 3 large suitcases and 5 backpacks. Apparently, they had sold all their furniture and only brought the bare essentials. "David, what about your job?" Selling their home suddenly, getting rid of all their belongings, and moving back in with us isn't normal behavior. I leaned forward to ask David some questions, but James, who had been just laughing until now, gently stood in front of me.
Isn't it wonderful? How often do we get the chance to live with them?
James suggested that we see how things go for a while. "You're right." I hesitated a bit, muttering more to myself than to James. David, who had been casually listening to our conversation, chuckled.
"Dad is really mellowed out. You were so strict when I was younger."
Was I?
"I remember getting the lowest score on a test in high school and being yelled at all night. It's a good memory now."
Jennifer leaned in, fascinated by David's story. Meanwhile, Kevin was quietly playing with his phone in the corner of the room. For a while, David and Jennifer were busy running errands, like handling Kevin's school enrollment, since they had both quit their jobs. When they came back at night, we had casual conversations.
"I've been looking for a job at the employment office, and I had an interview today."
I think it would be great if I could work at the same place as David.
That night, David and Jennifer devoured the dinner I had made. Their middle schooler, Kevin, had a small appetite and seemed skinny for his age. I felt sorry for him if the change in environment had affected his appetite. I wanted Kevin to eat more, so I made a lot of food every night. However, it was always David and Jennifer who eagerly enjoyed the meals.
Tomorrow, I'm going to an interview for a building manager position. They're hiring 2 people, so we're going to negotiate to get hired as a couple.
A week after this conversation, they finally got the building manager jobs. We were mostly supporting their lives since they barely had any money. I always cooked their meals as a matter of course, and they weren't paying any rent either. Since they moved in, our utility bills had skyrocketed, and they even started asking for clothes in a way that evoked sympathy.
Please bear with us until we get our paychecks and stabilize our lives. Sorry about this, Mom.
David asked in a joking manner. David had been an emotionally volatile child growing up. He would get angry over the slightest things and even damaged the walls of our house. The walls he broke in his youth were still not fixed, and I was a bit afraid that if we didn't indulge him somewhat, he might erupt suddenly. Back then, James was younger too and would confront David directly, despite his occasional violent outbursts. But now, James seemed to be tiptoeing around David and Jennifer, always wearing a polite, non-committal smile. However, there is something more concerning than financial issues. Despite having moved in a while ago, Kevin has not said a word. During dinner, James tries to talk to him about various things, but Kevin only gives vague answers or slightly moves his head, hardly engaging in conversation. He doesn't even make eye contact and seems to avoid us. Gradually, James and I began to struggle with how to interact with Kevin. After several months of this, our own lives started to feel the strain. Originally, we lived off my part-time job and our savings, so supporting them too was inevitably challenging. At this rate, we'd have to dip into our retirement savings. During a break at the burger joint where I work, I found myself deep in thought. Welcome. Oh. Kevin showed up at the burger joint where I work part-time without any warning. He was wearing his school uniform and carrying a bag, sending anxious glances in my direction, as if he had come straight from school. You came to see me. I'm so happy. Are you hungry? Kevin didn't say a word, but I encouraged him to sit at the counter, and I treated him to a burger. I explained the situation to the manager in the kitchen and said I'd pay after my shift, then watched Kevin whenever I had a moment. Don't worry about paying. Just make sure you eat well. Since I had already told Kevin not to worry about the money, he slipped away while I was serving other customers. I felt a bit sad, but seeing the clean plate where he had sat made me smile. From that day on, Kevin started coming to the burger joint almost every day to eat a burger. Since I don't work every day, I was curious if he came when I wasn't there. But when I asked my colleagues, they said he didn't. Knowing that Kevin came to the shop when I was there made me happy. Even on rainy days, sometimes in his tracksuit, Kevin would show up. He still didn't speak or express any gratitude, but I began to feel a strange bond between us. One day, David and Jennifer told me they were going on a business trip for 3 days and asked me to look after Kevin. They told me without any explanation, suddenly, on the morning of their departure.
We're going on a business trip, so take care of things for 3 days.
Then, David and Jennifer drove off in the van. Why would they go on a business trip if they're building managers? I wondered a bit, but since David and Jennifer never talked about their job specifics, I decided not to think too much about it. On a sunny day, seeing James hang out their bedding made me wish they would be more considerate of us.
When I was David's age, I was so focused on work that I didn't notice much around me.
James hung the laundry as he said that with a gentle smile. Is that really so? I thought to myself as I pruned the potted plants. James was indeed busy with work and often came home late when he was younger, but he always made time for the kids and family. David and Jennifer seemed somewhat disinterested in their son, Kevin, which left me feeling a persistent sense of helplessness. In the afternoon, while I was working at the burger joint, Kevin came in again that day. He usually arrived around the same time, so I signaled with my eyes for him to take his seat, but he seemed less energetic than usual. Did something happen at school? I didn't say anything, trying to be considerate, and silently placed a burger in front of him.
Thank you.
Without looking up, he said this to me in a slightly raspy voice. It was the first time I had heard him speak properly since they started living with us. I was so genuinely happy that I couldn't help but ask again, "Did you have fun at school?"
Well,
But he gave me a vague answer to that. It was just one word, but I was happy that Kevin spoke to me. I must have radiated some extra cheerfulness when interacting with other customers, as the manager chuckled at me.
You're in a good mood today.
After eating his burger, Kevin sat quietly, staring at the table. What's up? Maybe he's just resting after eating. I watched Kevin casually, but after more than 10 minutes of sitting there after finishing his meal, I began to feel a bit puzzled. As the number of customers gradually began to decrease, I took the opportunity to speak to Kevin. My shift ends in 30 minutes. Want to walk home together? Kevin looked up at me with a surprised expression, then slowly nodded. I asked the manager in the back if I could leave early, and when I finished my shift and stepped outside, Kevin was waiting. I lightly patted Kevin slightly hunched back, and we started walking together. I was pushing my bike, and Kevin was walking slightly behind me. Walking alongside Kevin, I couldn't help but reflect on how tall he had grown.
hamburgers. They're always so good. I start craving them in the afternoon.
Kevin said that suddenly. I had to resist the urge to look directly at his face. Come anytime. I was so happy that I almost cried. As I tried to suppress the smile forming on my lips, Kevin stopped walking. He looked at me with a determined expression, then finally spoke.
Grandma.
The sunset was turning the sky a deep red. With the sun backlighting him, I couldn't see Kevin's face clearly.
I'm really sorry for everything.
What? What do you mean? Kevin's sudden apology made me quickly set my bike to the side of the road and look at his face. He looked like he was about to burst into tears, his lips trembling slightly.
Dad always told me not to talk to you and Grandpa.
David did?
Mom and Dad aren't normal.
According to Kevin, before they moved into our house, David told him not to talk to me or James.
He said that if I got too attached, it would be troublesome later, and as a child, I might say something unnecessary. So he ordered me not to talk to both you and Grandpa at all.
Kevin revealed everything, explaining how David had strictly commanded him. Why? I almost spoke, but swallowed my words. Knowing David's rough personality, I could imagine what might happen if he got angry. Kevin probably felt he had no choice but to obey. I couldn't help but frown. Kevin, sounding truly distressed, told me that David had been stealing and selling James's collection from the shed on our property. In the shed, there are many valuable items that have been passed down from James's parents. There are many old antiques, but James often boasts that some of them are quite valuable. James manages this shed, and keeps it locked. He also organizes and cleans it regularly a few times a month, so there's no way he wouldn't notice if things were stolen.
Dad was excited because he got a great price for something he took to the pawn shop the other day, and they're using that money to travel.
What? It's not a business trip?
They gamble every day, and when he loses, he gets angry a lot. When we were at home, debt collectors would often knock on our door.
I started to feel lightheaded. I had sensed something was off. The small feelings of unease I had been experiencing all began to come together. Kevin told me that the ultimate plan was to drive James and me out of the house and sell everything valuable. After sharing this, Kevin had a gloomy expression. As the evening sky darkened, our shadows faded away. "Shall we go home?" Kevin nodded slightly and followed me as I pushed my bike. While looking ahead, I gripped the handlebars tightly. I couldn't see Kevin's expression behind me, but I could hear him faintly sniffing. I guessed he was crying, and I couldn't bring myself to look back. Kevin, still a middle schooler, had no choice but to follow his parents' orders, yet he bravely told me everything. I can't let his courage go to waste. After we got home, I explained the situation to James. James checked the shed and said with a slightly troubled expression,
"It does seem like some things are missing."
James was somehow smiling. Seeing him act as if it was someone else's problem, I decided to speak firmly. "Didn't you actually realize that David was stealing from the shed?"
Well, maybe they were struggling and needed the money.
If they were struggling, they could have just said so. This is like theft.
Theft is a strong word, isn't it, Kevin?
Kevin, who had been listening quietly, hung his head. James, still wearing his usual gentle smile, seemed to want to avoid conflict. I couldn't stand it and grabbed Kevin's shoulder, glaring at James. The one who suffered the most, caught up in his parents' troubles, was Kevin, and we were the ones who allowed it.
But even if things are missing from the shed, we can't be sure David took them.
I handed my phone to James. For a moment, he looked shocked, but on the screen, there was a photo of David and Jennifer, cautiously loading what seemed to be antiques from the shed into the van. The photo, likely taken secretly, appeared to have been shot through the gap in a window. I zoomed in on the photo to make it clearer for James. It was undeniable proof that David had stolen our antiques and sold them at a pawn shop. Clear evidence of a crime. "Who do you think took this photo?" Kevin did. Kevin told me about his parents' crimes.
Indeed, these are our collectibles, and this is a very valuable item.
Don't you understand yet? Kevin is showing us what he wants us to do, what we need to do now. I couldn't help but cry as I pleaded with James. I hugged Kevin tightly, continuing to cry. Though he was growing into a young man, Kevin was still just a child. I could never forgive David and Jennifer for forcing Kevin to deceive his grandparents. James, initially flustered by my emotional outburst, eventually placed a gentle hand on my shoulder, looking resolute.
All right.
When I looked up, I was stunned, and my heart skipped a beat. James had the sharp look in his eyes that I hadn't seen in years. It was as if he had returned to the days when he was known as a tough CO, feared for his aggressive business deals. The next day, David and Jennifer returned from their trip, unaware of anything. After placing some of their luggage in their room, they walked into the living room, chatting happily, only to freeze the moment they opened the door.
"Sit,"
James commanded David in a short, firm voice. David, who had been joking around until recently, noticed James's serious demeanor and obediently sat on the chair.
We're tired from the trip. Is there any food?
Do you have any debts?
Well, just a bit of gambling.
David was instantly cowed by James's intimidating tone. Jennifer, sitting next to him, stayed silent, watching the situation unfold.
The items in the shed have been passed down in our family. How could you sell them without permission?
Wait, I didn't sell anything. I don't know what you're talking about.
James immediately took the paper from his lap and placed it on the table. After hearing Kevin's story, James had gone to the pawn shop and explained the situation, getting a receipt issued. Although the pawn shop owner initially resisted, citing privacy concerns, James managed to get the receipt with the help of his former business associates. It was undeniable proof that David had stolen and sold items from the shed.
So, why did you sell them?
Well, you know, just laugh it off. We're family, right?
Of course, I'll forgive you. But
James stood up and left the room. David and Jennifer exchanged worried glances, their faces clouded with uncertainty about what was to come. James soon returned with two large men who looked down at David and Jennifer with stern expressions.
I have a friend who runs an addiction clinic. I asked him to make room for you.
David's eyes widened, and Jennifer froze with her mouth agape. The two large men, both wearing white coats, grabbed David and Jennifer's wrists as soon as they appeared.
Wait a minute. What is this? What's going on?
Please wait. Who are these people? This is scary.
I was holding Kevin tightly and watching the scene unfold from the kitchen.
They will get treatment for their gambling addiction. Don't worry about Kevin until they recover. Take them away.
David and Jennifer were being taken away by the large men, shouting loudly as they were led out.
This can't be real. Dad, please listen. I'll work hard from now on, I promise.
Me too. I'll work as hard as I can. Please forgive us.
They pleaded with James through their tears. Instead of involving the police, James decided to send them to a rehab facility. He firmly believed that this was the best way to secure Kevin's future.
A parent works quietly for their children. David and Jennifer have failed as parents. It's my responsibility for making them this way, and I'll find them jobs when they come back.
With that, James left the room, and David and Jennifer were taken to the clinic by the staff. In the now quiet house, Kevin looked dejected. I wanted to say something comforting, but nothing came to mind. James stood in front of Kevin and sat down gently.
It's going to be okay. Everything will be all right. I will make sure they become better people.
Grandpa,
I won't turn a blind eye anymore. For now, we'll be your parents. Study hard.
James, with a gentle smile, placed his large hand on Kevin's head and patted him. Kevin closed his eyes in embarrassment, but eventually started to laugh. After being taken to a psychiatric clinic, David and Jennifer were diagnosed with gambling addiction and admitted to a rehabilitation facility. They seemed to realize that they couldn't continue living as they were. Although they were initially reluctant, James's stern persuasion convinced them to enter the facility quietly. It seemed as if James had reverted to his younger, stricter self. But he remained calm and gentle with Kevin and me.
I have to be tough with David. My expectations go far beyond this level of results.
That's true, I responded in my mind. For Kevin, being left behind while both his parents went to a facility must have been a significant shock. What can I do to help right now? With these thoughts, I continued my part-time job at the burger joint as usual. After school, Kevin would come by almost every day and eat a burger, talking about his day, his complaints, and various other things became one of my favorite parts of the day.
Today at school.
With his mouth full of a burger, Kevin now showed the youthful innocence appropriate for his age. It seemed Kevin was naturally a talkative child. I want to get to know more about my beloved Kevin from now on.
It's been a year since we got married. Time to say goodbye to this life.
I really can't stand it anymore. It's been too long. I seriously can't stand breathing the same air as Sarah anymore.
Hearing Kevin and Emma talking in the living room, I suddenly caught my breath. Their conversation was something I couldn't just ignore. I quietly held my breath, making sure not to be noticed, and listened to their conversation through the gap in the door leading to the living room, recording it on my smartphone.
My company's truck is huge. Getting hit by that would be fatal. Everything's ready, just need the hitman to do his part.
That's so wicked. Well, it's not like there was ever any love from the start. As long as we can live comfortably, that's all that matters.
Their conversation was chilling, far from what you'd expect from family talk. I felt my whole body bristle with fear and ran away from there as fast as I could. Staying in that house was no longer safe. Trembling uncontrollably, I desperately thought about what to do next. My name is Sarah. I'm 35 and work in public relations at a real estate company. I got a job in real estate because my father, a wealthy landlord, owned a lot of properties and wanted me to inherit them someday, so he hoped I'd gain some knowledge for that. Thanks to some of Dad's advice, I own several lands and apartments, generating a passive income from them. I ended up in public relations on my manager's suggestion. Throughout my 20s, I was always in sales, but got a rotation into PR. Both sales and PR are fulfilling, and I spent my days working from dawn till late. The reason I even considered marriage was advice over drinks from that same manager.
Sarah, you are perfect at your job. Now all you need is a kind-hearted husband.
That's a compliance violation.
Drunk, my manager had suggested it, but was promptly scolded by a colleague and fell silent. However, I wasn't too upset. He was right, after all. I did desire marriage. But could I use the lack of opportunity as an excuse? I'll find myself a wonderful husband. Just you watch. I was quite drunk myself and replied spiritedly, never imagining that within a month I'd meet my fiancé. I met Kevin at the bar where I had talked about marriage with my manager. Just 3 days after going out with colleagues, I found myself back in the same bar. It was a bar close to our office, a regular spot for most of my colleagues who frequented it often. Actually, I like drinking alone. So there I was, sipping beer alone on a Monday evening, despite it being the start of the week. The chances of running into other members on a Monday night were slim. It was a strategic move.
Are you alone? Mind if I join?
The man who spoke sat next to me at the counter, in a casual tone. What? Oh, sure. I was honestly quite surprised. I've never been approached by a man I didn't know in my entire life. The reason is probably my looks. Frankly, I'm not what anyone would call cute. I have a round face, and each facial feature is small, all of which are inferiority complexes for me. Yet, at 35, I was surprised and also pleased when a man spoke to me for the first time in a bar. Most women would probably decline such an invitation, but aided by the alcohol, I immediately nodded.
Thanks. I'm Kevin. I'm a long-haul trucker. Nice to meet you.
He casually asked for a handshake. I thought, what a cheerful man, and shook his hand. I'm Sarah. I work at a real estate company. Nice to meet you. I might have come off a bit stiff. But Kevin didn't seem to mind and started talking about himself. He asked about my personal life too, and before I knew it, I was going along with Kevin's pace. I even ended up telling him, which wasn't necessary, that my father is a wealthy man. While we were talking, I found out that Kevin and I were the same age. I was so happy that I ended up sharing things I normally wouldn't with someone I just met. I'm embarrassed to say I've never been in a relationship with a man. At first, Kevin was taken aback by my words, but then he casually said, "Then, why not go out with me?" And I was utterly astonished. What? But?
Why not? Think of it as practice.
Even thinking about it now, it was a strange turn of events. But at that moment, I was completely drunk. Then, yes, I replied, and before I knew it, I was smiling. And so our relationship began, just one day after we met. Surprisingly, my relationship with Kevin went smoothly, and about a month after we met, Kevin proposed. I was shocked, but both of us being 35, and with Kevin saying it was better sooner rather than later, I simply accepted his proposal. I reported this to my manager.
What? Sarah? You're getting married.
He seemed almost ready to collapse with surprise. Yes, but I'll keep working as usual.
Is that so? Well, congratulations.
I wonder if it's just my imagination that my manager seemed a bit deflated. Once my marriage to Kevin was accepted by those around us, it really felt like married life with Kevin was right around the corner. And just 2 weeks after he proposed, we filed our marriage registration. To me, who had a whirlwind marriage, my parents were bewildered but happy. Kevin might look frivolous and speak casually, but he is actually friendly and affable, making him quick to warm up to new people. That's probably why my parents liked Kevin's character so much. After getting married, I moved into Kevin's home. Kevin's place was a small apartment, and honestly, it felt cramped and smaller than the apartment where I used to live alone.
Come on in.
Thank you. Since I was moving into Kevin's place, I entered his home hesitantly. Then, I heard footsteps from deeper inside the apartment, and my body jolted in surprise. At first, I thought he might have a large dog, but it turned out to be a human girl's voice.
Is this woman my new mom? Wow.
Emma, stop that reaction when you first meet someone.
The girl named Emma seemed to be a middle or high school student. However, her hair was permed into tight curls, and she wore flashy makeup, looking like a throwback to the glam girl fashion style, glaring at me as I stood there in shock.
Oh, sorry. It's just that.
I could somewhat guess what Emma wanted to say. It was obvious that she was disappointed seeing a not-so-cute woman in her mid-30s coming into the house. No, more importantly, what was this all about? I looked at Kevin, seeking an explanation.
Well, she's my daughter from a previous marriage. She's 16 now. I was married once when I was 18, but I didn't tell you. But whatever, right? The one I love now is you.
Marriage, a stepdaughter. I had no idea. The shock I felt then was indescribable. It might be classified as marriage fraud, But having just gotten married and facing this obstacle, my mind was only filled with confusion.
Well, I'm going out to hang with friends.
Watching Emma leave the room swiftly left me to ponder alone.
Sarah, make some dinner.
But Kevin didn't give me a chance to think, and just like that, I started this distorted married life. Even though finding out Kevin had a daughter was completely unexpected, after calming down a bit, it didn't seem all that bad. At 35, I might not have my own children, and since Emma is already a high school student, it's not like I have to raise her. I tried to think about it in as positive a light as possible. However, our married life faced other issues. About 3 months into our marriage, I started to wonder about the lack of intimacy at night. Come to think of it, we hadn't been intimate even once during our dating period. Though if we had been married for years, it might be understandable, but we were newlyweds. It was honestly lonely that Kevin didn't seem to desire me. Kevin, being the long-distance trucker, had varying hours at home. But we didn't always have different days off, and on his day shifts, we'd normally go to sleep in the same bed at night. Compared to other couples, our schedules might not align perfectly, but the complete absence of marital intimacy made me wonder if I lacked appeal. After much worry, I tried to subtly initiate intimacy, but he just brushed it off with "Sorry, I'm too tired today. Maybe another time." As someone with no experience in relationships, I couldn't bring myself to be more demanding with Kevin and went to sleep feeling frustrated. Well, I could have endured the lack of intimacy, but other family issues soon followed. The cause was none other than Emma. As I mentioned initially, Emma had a very flashy appearance, and her friends were just as flamboyant. I was often called by Emma's school because she and her friends were behaving poorly. The teachers, knowing I was a stepmother, showed some sympathy, but Emma looked indifferent even as I got scolded on her behalf. Why me? I was truly shocked. One day, knowing that Emma was bringing friends home gave me a bad feeling. When I got home from work on a Friday night, there was Emma with 3 friends in the living room, sitting cross-legged, snacking on junk food, and sipping sodas. Of course, they were the usual flashy group. That alone would have been fine, but there were crumbs scattered on the floor and juice spilled on the rug, leaving stains. That rug was a recent purchase. I really loved it and thought it was perfect for starting our married life, so I had spent a lot of time picking it out at the store. This really made me angry, and as I forced a smile and said hello, a stream of scolding poured out despite my efforts to remain composed. "If you spill snacks and juice, could you please clean it up? You all are the same ones who got scolded at school recently, right? You better start changing your attitudes, or you're going to face tough times as adults." As an adult, I felt it was my duty to teach these kids some manners. With that intent, I spoke in what I believed to be a gentle tone, trying to admonish them kindly. Despite my words, none of Emma's friends showed any signs of remorse on their faces. Instead, they looked at me with curious gazes and whispered among themselves,
"Is this that Sarah?" "You? Didn't we see her last time, when we got called to the office?" "Oh, really? We've been called in so many times I forgot."
That's hilarious. Seriously though, Sarah is like an old lady, and not pretty at all. Why did Emma's dad choose her?
Their conversation was unbearable to hear. I was particularly shocked by the comments made by the third girl. I'm aware that I'm not particularly attractive. But such comments shouldn't come from my daughter's friends. However, getting upset about her words would be immature, so I stayed silent.
You can't even respond, you know it's true.
Even Emma threw mocking words at me, and I couldn't stand being there any longer, so I decided to leave the house. Meanwhile, Emma and her friends were clapping their hands and laughing crudely. Why do I have to feel ousted from my own home? Cursing this unfair fate, I wandered aimlessly outside until Emma's friends left for the day. This way of life continued for about a year. I have not had any marital relations with Kevin since we got married. Emma still refuses to acknowledge me as her mother, always giving me cold looks. The number of times I was called into the school increased, and the teachers, exasperated, seemed to forget I was a stepmother, raising their voices. "We really need you to discipline her at home." I'm sure the teachers were tired of repeatedly dealing with similar issues. Every time I was called about Emma, I couldn't help but think, why is this happening to me? This was my daily life, but soon my marriage would end in an unexpected way. It was a certain Wednesday evening. I had left the house after telling Emma that I might come home late due to backlog from the previous day. Kevin was also going to be absent that evening due to work. However, when I got to the office, the stack of documents that should have been piled up on my desk was neatly gone. At that moment, my manager came over to me.
Sarah, you seem tired lately, so I finished them up for you yesterday.
He told me, "Thank you very much." As I said that, he smiled and returned to his desk. Honestly, I thought I would be working late today, so this kindness from my manager was very much appreciated. Because of this, I didn't have to work overtime today, and in fact, I had no other tasks, so I could go home a bit earlier than usual. Thinking it was rare to be home early, I decided to make Kevin's favorite stewed hamburgers for dinner. As I arrived home with this in mind, I thought, when I noticed something odd. Kevin's shoes, who was supposed to be at work, were at the entrance. Wondering if he had unexpectedly taken the day off, I was about to open the living room door when I heard Kevin and Emma talking.
It's been a year since we got married. Time to say goodbye to this life.
Seriously, it's been too long. Give me a break already. I can't stand sharing the same air with Sarah anymore.
Hearing Kevin and Emma's voices from the living room, I suddenly caught my breath. Goodbye to this life. What was that supposed to mean? Their conversation was something I couldn't just ignore. I quietly held my breath, making sure not to be noticed, and listened to their conversation through the gap in the door leading to the living room, recording it on my smartphone.
My company's truck is huge. Getting hit by that would be fatal. Everything is ready, just need the hitman to do his part.
That's so wicked. Well, it's not like there was ever any love from the start. As long as we can live comfortably, that's all that matters.
And to think, she's so naive. Got hooked by a guy like me at the bar, and spills everything when flattered a bit.
It's hilarious how naive Sarah is, but thanks to that, we found out she has quite a fortune. Really, she's such an easy mark.
Emma's laughter was chilling, her words not something you'd expect from a high schooler. I felt my whole body bristle with fear, and I fled from there as fast as I could. The content of their conversation was horrifying. Staying in that house was no longer safe. If their conversation was true, I would be attacked by the hitman Kevin had arranged. Shaking uncontrollably, I desperately thought about my next steps. After leaving home, I went to the city office to get a divorce form. Fortunately, it was still open. I filled out the divorce papers at a diner and then waited at an internet cafe until it was time for them to go to sleep. I spent that time trembling and feeling anxious. When the night grew late, I returned home. I quietly placed the divorce papers on the living room table. I would never return to this house again. With that resolution, I took only the essentials and went back to my parents' home. It was already past their bedtime, so I quietly went to my room and fell asleep. The next morning, my parents noticed I was there.
Well, you're back.
They were obviously surprised.
What happened all of a sudden? How is Kevin?
My father looked puzzled. Actually, I played the recording of last night's conversation between Kevin and Emma for my parents. As they listened to their conversation, their expressions darkened rapidly. After hearing everything, my father suggested in a low voice,
Let's go to the police.
Yes, the police. This was a serious criminal plan, and it made sense to report it. Honestly, since yesterday, I hadn't been able to think clearly, not even considering such an obvious course of action. I had only thought to use the recording if there was trouble during the divorce process. We'll go to the police. Convinced by my father's words, I got ready to go to the police station. Just then, my smartphone started ringing loudly. Startled by the sudden loud noise, I trembled. Since I rarely use my phone for anything other than work, I was drawn to the ringing and stared intently at the smartphone screen. Kevin. The caller was none other than Kevin. He must have woken up and found the divorce papers on the table. It was clear why he was calling. I glanced at my parents, asking, what should I do?
There's no need to answer. You don't need to listen to anything that man has to say.
My father said firmly, but the call ended and then rang again. We waited patiently for the ringing to stop, but Kevin was persistent. The calls kept coming every minute, every 10 minutes, every 5 minutes. This isn't getting us anywhere. Maybe it's best to talk to him once and get him to agree to the divorce. Finally, my parents nodded in agreement to my words. Eager to return to a peaceful daily life as soon as possible, I pressed the call button on my phone.
Hey Sarah, where are you right now?
As I answered the phone, Kevin's shouting came through as expected, and I instinctively pulled the phone away from my ear. I turned on the speakerphone so my parents could hear and placed the smartphone between us. Where? I'm at work, of course. I lied as convincingly as I could, trying to keep my voice steady.
What? At work? Then what's this divorce paper all about?
I came back late last night and just left the divorce papers on the table before going to bed.
We haven't been fighting much. Or have I cheated? So why is divorce suddenly on the table?
I could feel Kevin's irritation in every word. Indeed, as Kevin said, we weren't a couple that fought excessively, nor was there any infidelity. It's natural he would find it strange to be asked for a divorce without any apparent reason. But Kevin was the mastermind behind a plot with Emma to take my life. He must know about the terrible way Emma treats me. Yet, he has the audacity to act cluelessly about why I would want a divorce. I looked at my parents. I could tell they wanted to say something. Probably suggesting I reveal what was on the voice recorder. I had thought about just going straight to the police without saying anything, But with Kevin pushing me this much, I had no choice. It was time to let him know that I was aware of everything. With my heart pounding, I desperately held back my nervousness and decided to tell Kevin about what happened since yesterday evening. Let me clear up a misunderstanding for you. I know what you and Em are planning to do.
What are you talking about?
Kevin feigned ignorance, but his voice trembled slightly. With this tone, I might be able to get a confession out of him. Feeling like a detective interrogating a suspect, I continued. I said I came home late last night, but that was a lie. Actually, I finished work early yesterday and got home around 5:30. You can imagine my surprise when I got there. Kevin's shoes, which were supposed to be at work from the evening, were at the entrance. I might have believed it was just a shift in work hours, but that wasn't really the case, was it? Slowly, with the relentless determination of a predator cornering its prey, I methodically confirmed each fact.
So what? And why are you lying about coming home early yesterday? Why do you have to lie about everything?
I could hear Kevin's voice getting more desperate over the phone. With a sense of triumph inside, I crafted my next words carefully. Really, by now you should have figured it out. But if you really can't imagine why, let me spell it out for you. Yesterday evening, I overheard you and Emma discussing your plan to kill me and take my inheritance.
What?
It felt like Kevin's breathing stopped, and the air around us froze. Kevin probably never dreamed that I had overheard his conversation with Emma yesterday. But the reality was that I had heard everything.
What's going on? There's no way I'd think of something like that, right? Sarah, you must be misunderstanding something. Sure, I didn't have work yesterday and talked with Emma in the living room in the evening, but we were just discussing her school stuff. Sarah, haven't you been really tired lately? There's no way I would ever think about harming you. I love you so much.
It seemed Kevin had decided to play dumb, boldly lying in an attempt to convince me. But of course, I wasn't falling for it. I don't want to hear insincere declarations of I love you. It seems you won't believe what I'm saying. So I'll send you the recording via message right now. Listen to it. I recorded your conversation from yesterday.
What?
This must have taken Kevin by surprise, as I could hear his shock over the phone. I quickly sent the infamous recording to Kevin. Kevin was silent for a while, perhaps listening to the recording. However, occasionally I could hear Kevin muttering things like gosh and why, which made me smirk, knowing I had successfully confronted him with the evidence. See, you understand now. That's the evidence. I'm planning to go to the police now. This is clearly a criminal plan. I'm going to tell them that my husband is plotting against my life, so be prepared. After Kevin finished listening to the audio data, I told him this in a matter-of-fact tone.
Wait a minute. Police, what are you thinking? Even if this data is real, I haven't actually done anything yet. Look, let's start over. I won't think about weird stuff anymore. I'll talk to Emma too. She has always been rude to you, right? That's what you're upset about. I'll make her move out. But I don't have the money for her to live alone. Damn. I was planning to finally say goodbye to this poor life with your inheritance.
Despite Kevin's apparent admission of his guilt, he didn't seem inclined to apologize. If there was real love, he would have acted with my best interests at heart. Ultimately, all Kevin and Emma cared about was money, and I couldn't see a future where our marriage would lead to happiness. I had completely written him off. While looking into my parents' eyes, I took a deep breath. Kevin, who do you think you are? After deceiving me, you suggest we start over and sulk when things don't go your way. How corrupt can you be? And Emma, you're there too, right? Not going to school and plotting all this. I can't forgive you either. Yes. I had also noticed breathing on the phone that I suspected was Emma's.
What now?
Sure enough, Emma's voice came through the phone, and my parents gasped. I understand you can't accept me as your mother, but I can't condone you bad-mouthing me to your friends and helping your father with his criminal plans. I'm planning to report you to the police too. Be prepared.
What? Why should I go to the police? It's Dad's fault for being poor.
What did you say?
As the two began to argue like a family, I sighed in disbelief. Enough! Both of you, we're going to the police. By the way, my parents are here too, so there are plenty of witnesses. Now I'll leave the signing and submission of the divorce papers to you. I said this more decisively than usual, and Kevin protested. Hey, wait a minute.
If you're going to the police, at least apologize here.
Yeah. You ruined our future plans.
Kevin and Emma said something utterly unbelievable. What? I couldn't help but let that slip out. It seems these two really aren't very bright. Finally, I let the anger welling up inside me burst out. Why should I apologize to you? You should be the ones apologizing. Never involve me again. Goodbye. Without waiting for a response from Kevin and Emma, I hung up the phone on my own terms this time. Phew, that was the right thing to do, wasn't it?
Yeah, you did well.
I can't believe Kevin turned out to be such a terrible person. Anyway, I'm just glad you're safe.
Both parents let out sighs of relief. None of us thought that my marriage would fall apart in just 1 year. But obviously, I couldn't have continued to live happily with someone who was plotting to take my life. It's a sad outcome, but it's better than the worst-case scenario could have been. I've decided to think that way now. Kevin filed the divorce papers that same day, sending me a message saying, "We're divorced." The morning's phone call must have really hit him hard. Of course, I had a lawyer demand alimony from him. Later on, he even sent a pleading message saying, "Now that we're divorced, can we just forget about the police, please?" But I ignored all his messages and delivered the recording to the police the next day. Kevin and Emma were quickly arrested for their criminal plans and are probably being questioned by the police now. Kevin had mentioned using his company's truck to carry out his plan, but that also became known to his company. He had even discussed the infamous plan over the phone at work, and one of his colleagues who overheard it reported it to his supervisor. I'm appalled by Kevin's reckless behavior, but I am relieved that justice is served as a consequence of bad deeds. Kevin was fired from his job, of course. He intended to steal my inheritance and live a wealthy life, but instead, he's lost his job and now has to pay me alimony, forcing him into an even poorer life than before. If he hadn't been so greedy, he could have led a peaceful life. I hope he enjoys living in his own personal hell now. As for Emma, given her bad conduct at school, she was expelled considering her involvement in this incident. I think that's a fitting response. It might be inconvenient for Emma without a mother, but she's a high school student and old enough to understand right from wrong. This should be a good lesson for her, that one's bad actions will eventually be punished. I hope Emma reflects deeply while she is with the police. As for me, I've decided to stay with my parents for a while. I told my manager at work that I had divorced within a year.
Really? Maybe it's my fault for pushing you into marriage. Sorry about that. Oh, but maybe this means I still have a chance.
I was surprised when he said that so casually. But at the same time, I was truly flattered to discover that my manager felt that way about me. I had been thinking that I might take a break from marriage for a while, but I've known my manager for a long time and he's a kind and considerate person, especially towards his subordinates. Feeling that I could take my time to consider the future with him, I accepted his invitation for the weekend. I don't know what the future holds, but it's exciting precisely because it's unknown, and I'm grateful to my manager for reminding me of that. What? Are you still mad that I stole your boyfriend?
The childhood friend who snatched away my soon-to-be spouse had the nerve to invite me to their wedding. But that's not all.
You're still single, right? Sorry, I took your hot, successful boyfriend.
Infuriated by her thoughtless words, I felt compelled to confront her with a certain truth. More importantly, are you sure about your husband? What is going to happen to this homewrecker who didn't take my warning seriously? My name is Emily. I'm 28 and work at a small company. In a small workplace, I have to do everything. Though it feels odd to say it myself, I believe I'm doing an outstanding job. I have been dating my boyfriend, Mark, for 3 years. I fell head over heels for him, and after I made a move on him, we started dating. Mark and I have discussed marriage since we're both at the right age. But we haven't gotten into specifics. The reason is we don't see eye to eye on our life after marriage. He wants me to be a full-time homemaker. I want to continue my career. Mark has been on a straight path through school and now works at a big corporation, truly an elite. His mother was a homemaker who supported him all the way. He apparently wants me to be like his mother, who dedicated her life to her son. But I don't share that elite mindset. I want my children to grow up free and happy. Most of all, I'm not good at household chores. I've never wanted to be a full-time homemaker. These differing opinions are stalling our marriage plans.
Well, it can't be helped. Differences in values are a tough nut to crack, huh?
Feeling worn out by all these issues, I went to a cafe with my friend, Sarah, to vent. The one listening to my story with a wry smile was my childhood friend, Sarah. We've been close since kindergarten and can talk about anything. Even if I became a homemaker in today's world, you never know what might happen, right? His company could hit a rough patch anytime.
We'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
I doubt I could find a good job in a hurry if that time comes.
If you keep thinking like that, you'll never get married, will you?
Well, that's true. I leaned back in my chair and gazed at the ceiling of the cafe. Living alone, I manage my own household, but handling chores for two would be a challenge. Even deciding on meals becomes tricky. You can't just settle for convenience store meals every day. If I'm already thinking it's a hassle with just two people, then I'm not cut out for marriage.
Come on, don't say that. I'm meeting Mark later, so I'll get his side of the story for you.
What? Startled by her unexpected words, I instinctively stared at her. You're meeting Mark now?
Oops, didn't I tell you?
This is the first I'm hearing of it.
Really?
My best friend said, laughing heartily. True, I had introduced Mark to Sarah, and the three of us often went out for drinks. I knew they had exchanged contact details, but I had no idea they were meeting without me. She thinks I should be joining them. As I thought about it, Sarah continued, smiling.
He said there's a great seafood place he knows because I mentioned I like fish.
Hearing that, my face fell. I'm not that into fish.
That's why I didn't invite you, Emily.
Oh, right. So they intended to go without me from the start. What's that about? Even if we're close, going out for a meal alone with my boyfriend is just. Both Mark, who remained silent, and Sarah, who spoke so freely, seemed to lack tact. I stared intently at Sarah's face. It was clear soon after that neither had a dictionary that included the word tact.
Sorry, I've fallen for Sarah. Emily, let's break up.
I was speechless.
Sorry about that. I just have more fun with Sarah.
Mark apologized, but without any sign of remorse. I was confused by this new side of Mark, as I thought he was kind. Sarah was smiling and whined in his arm, saying I'm sorry.
Sorry, but I can't help my feelings for him.
With a refreshingly shameless smile, Sarah declared,
So yeah, I'm taking your boyfriend, Emily. Sorry about that.
That moment ranked as the most infuriating in my life. Without a doubt, my best friend had stolen the man I was about to marry. Damn it, so annoying. Slamming the beer mug down, I shouted. In the noisy bar, it barely made a scene. Mark didn't like these kinds of bars, and we never came together. It's been a while since I last visited. Sitting across from me were college friends, a married couple, Jake and Natalie, with mixed expressions of concern and amusement.
She is really upset, huh?
She looks really upset.
I once envied them for being so in love and marrying early during our college years. But I was thinking I'd go at my own pace, and look what happened. I never thought my best friend would steal my boyfriend.
Well, with Sarah, it kinda makes sense.
What, really?
Yay, Sarah has always been known for taking other people's boyfriends.
What? That's new to me.
Well, you wouldn't know, Emily, since Mark was your first boyfriend.
Stunned, I just nodded along with Natalie's words, while Jake agreed.
I've been hit on by her a few times myself.
What, you too? Though they went to different universities, they knew Sarah because I introduced her. We invited Sarah to college festivals, and that's how their friendship continued. I'm sorry.
No worries, I never fell for it. Only had eyes for Natalie.
Jake boasted, although I apologized instinctively.
Well, it just shows Mark was that kind of guy. Betty you found out before marrying him.
Yeah, I guess. Don't take it too hard. Look on the bright side, my friends advised, and I downed the rest of my beer. That's tasty. Another round.
You're really going at it.
I could never drink like this with Mark.
Oh right, he couldn't handle his liquor, could he?
Yeah, sort of. I nodded to Natalie's remark. It didn't matter anymore. I called the waiter and ordered another draft beer. Those two are history. Time to forget and move on to the future. Deciding this, I threw myself into work even more. After 6 months, the emotional wounds began to heal. Eventually, I stopped thinking about my ex and childhood friend altogether. But life has a way of bringing back memories unasked.
Hey, Emily, how are you doing?
This happened when I went back home after a while. Stepping out to buy some snacks, I heard a too familiar voice I wished to forget. It was Sarah, standing right there. Well, we might have stopped being best friends, but we were still childhood friends. Our parents' homes were close, so it was inevitable. And she, perpetually helping out at home, never really worked, always staying with her parents. But did it have to be such a coincidence? It made me curse fate. Just when my wounds had finally healed. I just want to leave this place quickly. Ignoring my thoughts, Sarah approached me in no time. What do you want? No need for pleasantries.
Don't be like that. Don't glare at me.
She was laughing merrily, as if she had forgotten about the incident 6 months ago.
Still mad about me taking Mark? Emily, you really hold a grudge, huh? Let's forget it and be friends again.
That's something the thief wouldn't say. Despite my irritation, Sarah continued laughing.
Actually, I'm getting married to Mark.
Oh, really? Unfazed by my cold response, Sarah kept smiling.
So Emily, won't you come to the wedding? I want you to give a speech as the friend representative.
She had the nerve to say that. What?
We've known each other the longest, after all. Please, I'm begging you.
I thought I knew her true nature, but there was still more to uncover. Shocked and dazed, Sarah then asked something unexpected.
So, what about you, Emily? Are you married?
What? Should I say I'm the woman whose boyfriend you stole 6 months ago when I was considering marriage? I grimaced.
Oh, right. You're still single, huh?
Sarah laughed, seeing my expression.
Are you still hung up on it?
What?
Sorry for taking your hot, elite boyfriend. Seriously, sorry.
They total waste of time. I just want to leave. Distracted, I decided to reveal something to Sarah. She didn't know about her fiancé, Mark. Hey, Sarah?
Huh? Oh, if you're asking me to set you up with a guy, it's not going to happen. Everyone likes me, but I don't think you're their type.
Ignoring Sarah's words, I said, more importantly, are you okay with your husband being a lightweight drinker?
Huh?
Sarah looked confused, wondering what I was getting at. We often went out for drinks, but he always stuck to non-alcoholic, right? Ever wonder why? He's really bad with alcohol.
Yeah, Mark never drinks, does he? But that's hardly a big deal, right?
Is that so? Well, just a heads up. With a meaningful smile, I turned to leave, giving Sarah a sly grin.
Hey, wait. What about attending the wedding?
Instead of waving goodbye, I left with a gesture, raising just the middle finger of my hand, and walked away without a word. Let's see what happens now. Sometime later, I received a call. It was Sarah. I could have blocked her number, but I kept it for amusement. I'm a bit wicked, I admit. Checking the calendar, it was the day after Sarah and Mark's wedding. Eagerly, I pressed the call button. Hello, Sarah, what's up?
Why didn't you tell me?
As soon as she answered the phone, there was a loud scream in her ear. I instinctively pulled the phone away, but could still clearly hear Sarah's voice.
That guy, he made a scene at the reception.
Really? I nodded calmly as Sarah recounted the events. Oh, really? He drank alcohol at the reception?
Right? He took a sip pushed by friends and got carried away. He's weak but likes alcohol. Then what the heck?
Sarah described how Mark was. He, after one drink, started chugging more and more. Initially, Sarah thought he was just flushing red and quiet, but the moment Mark's boss began his speech,
Shut up.
Suddenly, a loud voice boomed. It was none other than Mark. As Sarah and all the attendees gasped in shock, Mark stood up and, in an unbelievable act, snatched the microphone from his boss. And that's not all. He also tore off the boss's toupee from his head. Yes, the boss's well-known secret. He wore a toupee. Mark had snatched it off, and revealing a perfectly bald head.
1. More bald than the average person.
Amidst the speechless crowd, only Mark seemed pleased.
2. A mysterious bald spot.
Mark burst into laughter, tapping his boss's shiny bald head. Immediately after, a scream echoed through the reception hall. It was from the boss. With a bright red face, the boss snatched his toupee back from Mark and silently left the venue. Luckily, the counting song ended at 3, a crescent moon bald spot. Oh dear.
Did you just say, oh dear? It was a mess even after that.
The commotion was among Mark's company colleagues. Amidst the shouts of "What are you doing?" Mark laughed heartily and downed a glass of champagne. Then, sitting down, there was a moment of silence. Just when it seemed things had calmed down, the ceremony continued. I was impressed that they continued the ceremony, but of course they couldn't have just stopped. And then came the wedding cake. Just as they were about to cut the cake,
he suddenly grabbed my face.
And then I couldn't contain my excitement.
He shoved my face into the cake.
Yes, the best turn of events. Awesome. Really, wow, he sure did something.
Not did something. He made a complete mess of things.
Through the phone, I could hear Sarah's voice, on the verge of tears. Actually, she was probably crying. I've known her long enough to tell even without seeing her face. As I pictured her crying, I burst into laughter. That's so funny. I told you, he can't handle his liquor.
It's not just weak, that's being a drunkard.
Yes, Sarah is right. Mark is a drunkard. Even worse, once sober, he wouldn't remember anything he'd done, which was a real problem. I knew about his bad drinking habits even before we started dating. In fact, when a mutual friend introduced us, that friend had warned about never, ever let Mark drink. However, on our first date, perhaps due to nerves, Mark mistakenly drank from my glass. That's when he really messed up. Well, he made a scene, made a mess, spilled his drink on me, and got all tangled up. To top it off, he tried to strip in the bar, so I had to hurriedly stop him, something I remember clearly. Or rather, I can forget. After that, I made sure never to let him drink alcohol again. I was careful to prevent any mistakes from happening. Luckily, in these times, there are hardly any company drinking parties. Many people drink non-alcoholic beverages, so no one forced alcohol on Mark. He himself seemed to understand that drinking was bad for him, as he consistently stuck to non-alcoholic drinks. Thanks to that, there were no problems and things were peaceful. However, I anticipated that a wedding would be a different story. And almost no one knew about Mark's bad drinking habits. Only I and a few close old friends knew about it, but he betrayed me and had a wedding. So, none of my friends were at the ceremony. As a result, by some fluke, there was not a single person at the reception who knew of his bad drinking habits. And he spectacularly messed up. That's the story. All's well that ends well, huh? So, what did he end up doing?
He started laughing hysterically at me covered in cake and then suddenly began to strip.
The reception was a cacophony of screams. In the end, Mark, who was about to strip, collapsed and was carried out by the men, ending the event. And Mark doesn't remember any of it.
Exactly. He's acting all nonchalant, like, what about the honeymoon? As if it's the right time for that.
Right, I get you. Hilarious. Apparently, Mark turned pale when he heard the story and showed up at work. And then, while waiting for him to return, Sarah called me to complain.
Why didn't you tell me?
Well, I did say he can't handle his liquor, right?
It's not about being strong or weak. That's not just bad drinking. That's alcohol madness.
It's not my business. Let's just hope he doesn't get fired. With that, Sarah was speechless. Taking in her silence, I quietly hung up the phone. Of course, I blocked her number afterward, so she couldn't contact me again. After that, being childhood friends and all, rumors started to spread around our hometown. According to what I heard from my parents, Mark, who managed to avoid getting fired, was sent off to some backwater branch. He could have made a comeback to the head office if he had tried hard, but instead, he messed up big time, skipping work and ultimately got fired. Sarah, who had planned to marry a high-earning, handsome elite and enjoy a leisurely life as a stay-at-home wife, reluctantly moved to the countryside with him but was furious when he was fired. She demanded a divorce and sought alimony. But then, the tables turned. Mark counterclaimed for alimony, citing her infidelity as the reason. Moving to the countryside, with its lack of entertainment, she started an affair, of all things. And it was with a married person, which is just scandalous. Typical woman who wants other people's men, indeed. The divorce proceedings turned into a quagmire, and the alimony ended up being nullified as both were at fault. They divorced. Mark, back at his parents' place, spiraled into alcohol dependency. On the brink of addiction, his parents admitted him to a clinic for treatment. Who knows how many years it will take for Mark to reintegrate into society. And Sarah, after becoming the talk of the town, she couldn't return home and her whereabouts are now unknown. There was a call to her family once, crying, "I can't make ends meet." But after they turned her away, she went off the grid. Having lived at home and never worked, Sarah had no idea how to make money. Who knows where she is and what she's doing now? It takes years to build a friendship, but only a moment to destroy it. As for me, I've thrown myself into my work and moved on. I think my luck is changing because I've met someone new. He's no high-flying elite, but he's steady at work, has a calm demeanor, and being with him feels safe. We go to bars together, and he doesn't expect me to be a stay-at-home wife. He believes men should do their share of the housework. And now, I see his nervous face in front of me.
Please, marry me. I'll make you happy.
His face is red as he proposes, and I sense a happy future with him.
I have a secret child with your sister. Just divorce me quietly.
No way, I'm not divorcing you. I answered quickly. I glanced at Lily, and she was smirking. I sighed, thinking, what I feared has happened. Meanwhile, James, looking surprised, asked me again.
What? Why?
Of course not. Because. I fell silent there. When we returned to my parents' house for our wedding greeting, I met Lily and had a feeling this might happen. So, I'm prepared. I'm not the old me anymore. Lily had always taken things away from me. But this time, it's my turn. I will never forgive you both for betraying me. I won't forgive my sister or my husband. You'll pay for ruining my life. My revenge won't be sweet, so get ready. Thinking that, I took a deep breath. My name is Emily Smith. I'm a 30-year-old housewife, married for 3 years. Before getting married, I worked at a local bank, and I married James, who worked at the same bank. James is kind and well-trusted at his job. I also love his serious and dependable nature. His parents are also kind to me and have mentioned they can't wait to see their grandchild. But that wish might not come true, because lately, things have been a bit strained. The reason is probably because I haven't gotten pregnant. I believe in letting nature take its course. But James desperately wants a child and blames me for not getting pregnant. Maybe I should try fertility treatments. I stared at the search history for gynecologists. Sure, if I undergo fertility treatment, there's a chance I might get pregnant, just like James wants. But what if I still can't get pregnant? The thought scares me, and that's why I can't go through with it. Some people might think that's a minor issue, but to me, it's a big problem. Because before meeting James, I had never dated anyone. At first glance, it might seem unrelated. I want to think so too, but I can't help worrying. If I break up with James, there won't be a next time. I think it's all because of my sister, Lily, who's 2 years older than me. Of course, blaming others isn't right, but anyone who knows Lily would understand. Lily is attractive and well-known in our hometown, but her personality is the worst. Especially the way she acted like a queen made her unpopular with the other girls in her class. She couldn't stand it unless she was number one. Being pampered was a given. If you went against Lily, she'd push you to the edge. That's the kind of person Lily is. Naturally, she didn't change at home. Since we were young, I had learned this lesson many times. Among those bitter memories, one event stands out the most. It was my 10th birthday. That day, my mom unusually spoke to me.
Emily, today's your birthday, right? Is there something you want?
Really? Can I?
We don't have a choice. Your grandpa.
Mom continued with a weary expression. My grandfather on my dad's side had sent some money for my birthday. He wanted me to buy something I wanted. Moreover, he wanted a report on what I bought, so I could not buy something. She explained all this in detail.
So, what do you want?
Well.
There were so many things I wanted, but what I wanted most was new clothes. I was always wearing Lily's hand-me-downs. I didn't have a single piece of clothing bought just for me. I wanted clothes of my own. Just as I was about to say that, Lily, who was next to me, smirked. Then she said to Mom,
How about a dictionary?
A dictionary? Why?
Because Emily isn't good at studying and she's not cute either. Aren't you worried about her future?
Lily smirked. Mom thought for a moment and then smiled.
You're right. Emily is nothing like you, Lily.
Wait, I want a...
Emily, you're okay with that, right?
Mom pressed me for an answer. I was about to argue, but Lily cut me off.
Emily, you don't have any complaints, do you? I want clothes. Huh? A plain girl like you dressing up? It's pointless.
Lily raised her voice. I flinched at the volume.
That's right. Do as Lily says.
Mom always sided with Lily. Moreover, she doted on Lily all the time. Probably because Lily resembled her. In the end, I was strictly convinced by Mom and Lily to get a dictionary. I remember calling my grandpa to thank him, but I wasn't happy at all. In this way, Lily always put me down. It was the same when it came to family outings.
Mom, Emily doesn't want to go out.
Really? Then, Emily, you stay home.
Needless to say, Lily said this on her own. But I couldn't speak up, so I stayed home. Even after that, Lily kept manipulating me. For example, with dating. When I had a crush on someone at school, Lily approached him before I could, and she started dating him. I think it was because I had his photo.
Hey, why are you with him?
When I asked, Lily shamelessly replied,
Because you look like you liked him.
You took him away? Why?
Don't you think he's too good for you? With your looks, dating someone is a luxury.
That really got to me. I know I'm not good looking, but that's none of Lily's business. If I stayed with Lily, my life would be a mess. Thinking that, I decided to attend a college far away. Meanwhile, my older sister Lily, who was 2 years ahead of me, had already gone to college. She was attending an all-girls university in New York.
The other day, I got scouted. What should I do?
Why not become a model?
That might be a good idea.
Mom and Lily laughed together. I was so tired of their conversations. So, without saying anything to Mom, I applied to a university in a small town. Soon, I received my acceptance letter. I never told Mom or Lily. It helped that neither of them paid much attention to me. I easily went to the small town university. Then, I got a job at a local bank. That's where I met my future husband, James. Eventually, James proposed to me. I was at my peak of happiness. But I had one concern: the so-called marriage greeting. It was fine for me to visit James's family. The problem was James coming to my family's house. Lily was there. What would happen if James met Lily? I was terrified. But we had to do the marriage greeting. So, I made up my mind and took James to my family's house. Luckily, Lily was out. Apparently, she was out with her boyfriend. I saw this as a great opportunity and quickly finished the greeting and left.
Really? Marriage? You?
Yeah.
Is that so?
Surprisingly, Mom was quite calm. Maybe I was worrying for nothing. Just as I thought that, Mom said to me,
I need to talk to you. Come here.
Dad was keeping James company. I glanced at them as I stood up. Following Mom, I entered her room. As soon as I was inside, she erupted in fury.
What are you thinking?
What do you mean?
You're the younger sister. Getting married before your older sister. What are you thinking?
I was taken aback. I didn't think it mattered who got married first, but it seemed very important to Mom. Doesn't Lily have a boyfriend? She's out with him today, isn't she?
So what? We're talking about you right now.
Mom's brow furrowed deeply. I quickly looked away.
He's a banker, isn't he? How cheeky of you.
What do you mean?
Lily's boyfriend works at a factory. That's it. You should give him to Lily.
Oh, so that's what this is about. I'm marrying someone who makes more money than Lily's boyfriend. She didn't seem to like it. I wish we hadn't come for this greeting. I sighed as I looked at Mom. She pouted, clearly displeased.
What? Do you have a complaint?
Yes, I'm not giving him to Lily.
In such a short time, you've gotten quite cheeky.
Mom ground her teeth. I scoffed. I've grown up. I'm capable of not relying on you, you know.
Then at least wait until Lily gets married.
Just as Mom was about to finish, Lily's voice suddenly echoed from the front door.
I'm home. Oh, do we have guests?
This is bad. I rushed out of Mom's room. I headed toward the living room where James was. But I was a step too late. Lily had already entered the living room.
Who might you be?
Hello. You're Emily's sister, right? I'm James.
Once again, Lily was interfering. Bitter memories flashed through my mind. But contrary to my worries, Lily said something unexpected.
Oh, you're my sisters. Nice to meet you. I'm Lily.
I was speechless at Lily's reaction. Noticing this, Lily said,
He seems like a good man. Are you getting married?
Oh yeah.
Congrats.
Lily said that and patted me on the shoulder. Then she walked past me. Oh, Lily.
What?
Lily turned around. I had a lot to say, but I couldn't find the words. Seeing me struggle, Lily said,
We're sisters. Of course, I'm happy about your wedding.
With that, Lily left the living room. I was left confused. In any case, our wedding greeting ended without incident. After that, James and I officially became husband and wife. But I still had a lingering doubt. There's no way Lily's personality could change that much. She must be plotting something. However, we lived far apart. Even if she planned something, it wouldn't be easy. But I should still do what I can. I took every precaution I could. By doing so, I kept my peace of mind. Eventually, our newlywed life began. By then, I had completely forgotten about Lily. We saw each other at the wedding, but since then, I hadn't heard from her. My mom also hadn't contacted me, and I was relieved that everything seemed fine. And just like that, 3 years flew by. By this time, Lily was a thing of the past. Instead, a new issue had arisen. I wasn't getting pregnant. There were no issues with our married life, and we got along well. Yet, I still wasn't getting pregnant. Normally, you might consult your mom, but my mom and I didn't get along. So, I talked to my mother-in-law, Sarah. Sarah said to me,
"Don't worry about it. These things are all about timing."
Sarah treats me like her own daughter. I trust her and even think of her as my real mom. But James really wants a child.
It's okay. Just let nature take its course.
Sarah encouraged me like that. But James was strict with me.
Maybe it's your fault we're not having a baby?
That's not true. We both got tested. When I argued back, James pouted like a child.
Test results can say anything. Anyway, I want a kid.
James kept insisting on that. This started to create a strain between us. At this rate, not only would I not get pregnant, but our marriage might even be in danger. So I consulted my college friend Amy, who had experience with childbirth. So that's the situation. What should I do?
First of all, why not try changing your environment a bit?
What do you mean?
Well, maybe a trip for just the two of you? It could be a nice change of pace and good for both of you.
If we were undergoing fertility treatments, traveling might be tricky. But we were just trying to conceive naturally. Less stress can make it easier to get pregnant. I remember seeing some data on that somewhere. All right, I've decided. I'll suggest a trip. I decided to boldly invite James on a trip. If we're going, the beach we've always wanted to visit sounds perfect. So I invited James on a trip. I thought he might refuse, but he agreed right away.
I'll have to work out the details with my job, but we can make it work.
Great. I'm looking forward to it.
I'll take care of the travel arrangements.
And just like that, we planned our trip. James booked a hotel in the neighboring state that I had wanted to visit. Then, 6 months after I suggested a trip, we finally went on our vacation. It was our first trip together since our honeymoon. From the moment we left the house, I couldn't stop feeling excited. By the time we reached the hotel, I wondered if I might get exhausted from all the excitement. I kept talking to James the whole way. James also seemed to enjoy listening to me. I felt that reconciling wouldn't be hard. My heart was pounding with excitement. Yes, I was excited. Alone. I realized this when we arrived at the hotel. In front of the hotel, Lily was inexplicably waiting for us. When she saw us, she waved. Why is Lily here? I asked James, and his face suddenly became tense. My mind was filled with anxiety. We entered the room we had booked for the three of us. As soon as we got in, James got down on his knees.
I'm sorry, Emily. Please listen to me.
Listen to you. About what? Even as he spoke, all I could think of were unpleasant things. Eventually, James said one of those things aloud.
I have a secret child with Lily. Just divorce me quietly.
No way. I'm not divorcing you. I answered quickly. I glanced at Lily, and she was smirking. I sighed, thinking, what I feared has happened. Meanwhile, James, looking surprised, asked me again.
What? Why?
Of course not, because. I fell silent there. When we returned to my parents' house for our wedding greeting, I met Lily and had a feeling this might happen. So, I'm prepared. I'm not the old me anymore. Lily had always taken things away from me. But this time, it's my turn. I will never forgive you both for betraying me. I won't forgive my sister or my husband. You'll pay for ruining my life. My revenge won't be sweet, so get ready. Thinking that, I took a deep breath. When I looked up, James was staring at me. So, my sister is pregnant? Do you have anything else to say?
Yes. Why won't you divorce me?
James raised his voice. I looked away and answered, if I agreed to a divorce now, I'd be at a loss.
At a loss? What are you talking about? I'll pay you alimony. Don't you trust me?
How could I trust a man who just confessed to cheating? Does he not realize that? Setting that aside, the real problem isn't James. It's Lily. Lily is smooth-talking and has Mom on her side. That means she'll try to manipulate me later. Lily is pregnant, isn't she? As her sister, you should consider her happiness. Mom's definitely going to say something like that. But I'm not naive anymore. Even if she says that, I'm confident I can argue back. However, if she uses dirty tricks, I might lose. For example, what if Lily tells our relatives that James was originally her partner? It would make it look like I stole him. Of course, that's not true. But Lily is persuasive and attractive, and there are quite a few male relatives who would believe her. In other words, it's clearly Lily's fault. I need someone to testify to that. Normally, that would be the role of my parents. But my parents are useless. My dad is still okay, but my mom sides with Lily. So, the only people I can rely on are my in-laws. If James admits in front of Tad and Sarah that it's his responsibility, I'll consider the divorce.
Really?
Yes, I don't lie. I'm not like my sister. I glanced at Lily. She snorted in disapproval.
Not like Lily. Lily doesn't lie.
Oh, James, you've been fooled too. I let out an exaggerated sigh. Then James suddenly became angry. He looked straight at me and raised his voice.
Do you hate your sister? She's so kind.
A truly kind sister wouldn't steal her younger sister's husband. Those were the words that came to mind. But I swallowed them and decided to reveal Lily's true nature first. Oh, right. James, you don't know my sister's true colors.
Lily's true colors?
James tilted his head. At that moment, Lily interrupted.
Emily, are you planning to lie again? How many times have I told you? Lying is wrong.
It seemed she wanted to paint me as the liar. The old me would have gone silent here, but the new me wouldn't be intimidated. I snorted and continued calmly. Sis, you're just jealous of me, aren't you? You've always tried to bring me down and steal everything I have.
What? Stop lying.
It's not a lie. You took the person I liked, and now you're trying to take my husband too. Lily fell silent at my accusation. Now's my chance, I thought, and pressed on. You have such a terrible character. You enjoyed bringing me down, didn't you? And you're only after James's money, aren't you? You couldn't stand your ex-boyfriend working at a factory because he was poor. As soon as I said that, Lily's face changed. I smirked. I had heard this from a classmate back in our hometown right after I got married. When I went to my parents' house for the wedding greeting, Lily had a boyfriend who worked at a factory. They were about to get married, but when news of my marriage came out, they broke up. Officially, it was a mutual breakup. But in reality, Lily had said she couldn't be with a poor man. I kept talking to James about Lily, her terrible character, and her obsession with money. After I had said everything, I sighed. Surely James understood now. But that wasn't the case. As soon as I stopped talking, James raised his voice.
You're awful.
What?
No matter how heartbroken you are, how can you say such things about your sister?
James looked at me with cold eyes. It's hopeless. He's completely fooled by Lily.
That's it. We're definitely getting a divorce.
But I wanted him to say that in front of his parents. That's what I wanted to say, but James completely misunderstood.
Shut up. No matter how much you refuse, I'll take this to mediation or court if I have to.
I had no intention of refusing the divorce. I didn't want a man who would cheat with my sister. Yet, James didn't understand my true intentions. It was my final warning. Fine, let James hit rock bottom. I turned my back on James and Lily. Then I grabbed my bags. I'm leaving. You two can do whatever you want.
Yeah, do whatever you want. Right, Lily?
James held Lily's hand. Lily squeezed his hand and nodded.
Yes. Let's raise our baby with love.
If it's really their baby, I muttered to myself as I walked out. After leaving the hotel room, I went home alone. Then I packed my things quickly and left the house. I headed straight to my in-laws' place. I explained the situation to Tad and Sarah, who were both shocked. So it looks like we're getting a divorce.
That idiot. What was he thinking?
Tad erupted in anger in front of me. As Tad calmed him down, Sarah asked me,
A divorce is inevitable, but will you be able to get alimony and everything? Are you okay?
Yes, I have enough evidence. In fact, I had prepared something specifically for this trip. It was a wearable camera that fit in my chest pocket. I had planned to record parts of the trip with it. Of course, it was meant to surprise James. But all I ended up capturing was James's apology and his explosive confession. At least it was good evidence of his infidelity. If I had known, I might have agreed to the divorce right then and there. At that moment, I thought refusing the divorce might disadvantage me, so I didn't agree. But if I had known I had evidence recorded, I might have agreed. I made so many mistakes. But there's no use in regretting now. For now, I'll wait for James and Lily to return. While exchanging information with someone, I waited for James and Lily to come back. A few days later, Sarah called me.
James and Lily finally came back.
Upon receiving that call, I quickly contacted Amy. Then, together, we visited my in-laws' house. Sorry to keep you waiting. I greeted my in-laws. For some reason, James pouted.
You're late. What were you doing? Cheating?
That's you, I thought to myself. But I didn't say anything and just sat across from James. Soon, under Tad's direction, we started discussing our divorce. James was the first to speak. Of course, he made these claims.
I just wanted a child. It's Emily's fault for not getting pregnant.
While I seethed, James insensitively continued to say whatever he wanted. If I had gotten pregnant, he wouldn't have cheated. He was only seduced by Lily. Lily is kind and comforting. He insisted he had no choice but to leave me. Listening to the selfish excuses of a cheater was infuriating. But I had to listen. Half paying attention, I waited for James to finish.
So, that's why we should get divorced.
James slammed the signed divorce papers on the table. Tad's face darkened a bit.
Is that all you have to say?
Yeah, I'm definitely getting a divorce. If Emily refuses, I'll take it to court.
I agreed with the divorce. But the issue was the terms. I had many things to say, but this was the most important. I'll agree to the divorce, but if we do, are you planning to marry Lily?
That's none of your business. But yes, I do plan to remarry. Right, Lily?
James smiled at Lily. Lily returned the smile demurely. This was becoming ridiculous. It seemed best to wrap this up quickly. I glanced at Amy next to me. Amy nodded slightly.
Excuse me, may I say something?
Who are you?
I'm Emily's friend, Amy. Can you take a look at this?
Amy placed her phone on the table. Everyone leaned in to see.
What is this?
James was at a loss for words as soon as he saw the phone. Slowly, he looked at Lily next to him. Lily, on the other hand, started to break out in a cold sweat. Her face turned pale, and she began to tremble.
This is a photo I took at the hospital, and you can see Lily here.
Amy pointed to the screen. Then she continued with a smile.
This is in front of the gynecologist's office, but the man next to Lily, who is he?
The photo showed Lily chatting with a young man in front of the gynecologist's office. Let's go back a bit. It was a few days before the trip. I got a call from Amy. I answered cheerfully, but Amy sounded unusually somber. What's wrong, Amy? Did something happen?
I'm pregnant with my second child.
What? Congratulations. I thought it was good news, but it seemed I was wrong. Amy continued in a subdued voice. She saw Lily at the hospital during her checkup. Lily was with a man, and from their conversation, it seemed Lily was also pregnant. It appeared the man was the father. That's what Amy told me. So the father of Lily's baby is this man. As I said this, I pointed to my phone on the table. At that moment, Lily started to protest.
What is this? And why does your friend know me anyway?
That's because.
Oh, I get it. You're trying to set me up.
Lily slammed the table. Amy and I flinched at the sound.
If you and this weird woman are going to make up lies, I'll sue you both for defamation.
Lily shouted. I replied with one eye closed. It's not a lie. I'm not trying to set you up.
What? Then how does that stranger know me?
At that moment, Amy quietly said,
Classmate.
What?
We were classmates.
Who? With whom?
Lily demanded, glaring at Amy. Amy lifted her head defiantly.
Lily and I were classmates.
What? I don't know you.
Lily shot back. Amy then showed another photo.
This is our high school's photo. You can see Lily and me here.
In the photo, Amy and Lily were indeed there. However, they were looking in different directions. Looking at the photo, Amy began to recount her past. When Amy entered high school, she liked a boy. They got along well and often talked. They even walked to and from school together sometimes. But there was someone who didn't like seeing them together. That was Lily. When Lily happened to see them, she got irritated. Then she started to disrupt them. She even hurled insults at Amy, saying things like,
"Someone like you shouldn't speak up. Plain girls should stay quiet in the corner of the classroom."
Lily would say such things to Amy almost every day. Eventually, Amy became too scared to go to high school and dropped out. After that, she moved to this area, her mother's hometown. After a while, Amy got back on her feet. She re-enrolled in high school and eventually went to college. That's where she met me. Seeing me brought back memories for Amy. But she learned that I was also mistreated by Lily. Knowing this, Amy decided to be friends with me. Since then, we've supported each other, and here we are.
So yes, I know a lot about you.
Oh well.
Lily hesitated. She looked at James for help, but James was shocked. He seemed surprised by Lily's earlier outburst. It's because she lost control and forgot herself. When Lily threatened to sue us, she was still somewhat calm. But after that, she couldn't hide her true nature.
James, that was.
Lily, is that really your?
No, it's not. Emily and her friend are just.
She started making excuses, but it was too late. James decided he wouldn't remarry her after all. He even began begging me to take him back, as if that would ever happen.
Emily, it was just a moment of weakness. Please, let's not get divorced.
No way. I'm not changing my mind. I said it in the same tone as when I refused the divorce. Even so, James couldn't give up.
Please, I'm begging you.
He even started bowing deeply. But I ignored him. I picked up the divorce papers from the table. Then I said to James, "I'll go ahead and submit the divorce papers."
Wait a minute.
"I won't wait. Goodbye." With that, I turned my back on the pleading James. After leaving with Amy, we headed to the court. I quickly filled out the divorce papers and submitted them. All done.
I'm glad.
Thank you. It's all thanks to you, Amy. Keep getting on with each other. About a year has passed since that conversation with Amy. Having successfully divorced, I now work at a new company. I received alimony from James and also managed to get alimony from Lily. My mom opposed it, of course. But my usually quiet dad sided with me. He even told my mom that if she complained, he'd divorce her. Mom couldn't say anything after that. When my mom is alone, she can't do anything. She knows that very well. Since then, my mom and Lily have kept their distance from me. Another day done. I muttered as I returned to my room. Just then, my phone rang. Hello. What? The police? It was a local police officer. Panicking, I asked what had happened. This is what the officer said. It was a few hours before that call. The bank received a report that someone was causing a disturbance inside. Upon receiving the report, the police suspected it might be a bank robbery. Several officers rushed to the bank immediately. When they arrived, they found that the ones causing the disturbance were just an ordinary man and woman. They weren't robbers, they were just having a dispute with a bank employee. That employee was James. And the ones causing the scene were Lily and her boyfriend. Nevertheless, the officers stepped in to stop them. When asked for an explanation, they reportedly said,
"This man isn't paying the alimony."
Lily's boyfriend, John, added,
"This guy messed with my girl. There's nothing wrong with demanding alimony."
John's reasoning might have been valid. But causing a disturbance at the bank is a different matter. In the end, Lily and John were given a stern warning and then released. Apparently, while the divorce between James and me was resolved, the affair with Lily wasn't over. I later heard that John demanded alimony from James for the affair, but James refused to pay. After Lily found out she was pregnant, John had gotten engaged to her. Whether John was serious about marrying her, I have no idea. I also don't know how far their relationship had progressed, but it was certain they were engaged. Using that engagement as a reason, John demanded alimony from James. It's possible that Lily and John were working together to trap James. Regardless, John officially demanded alimony from James, and James refused. This led to their heated argument and the scene at the bank. This was already a big enough problem, but a bigger issue arose shortly after. What? They showed up at the house? According to the police, after the altercation at the bank, Lily and John went to James's apartment. They caused a scene there too, shouting loudly. Naturally, this led to another police call. When the officers arrived, they decided that they couldn't let it go. So they arrested the two for trespassing. Why was I being contacted? So, I'm supposed to be their guarantor? When I asked, the police officer confirmed it. Here's the situation. Because of my divorce, Lily was abandoned by our dad. And our mom couldn't help her either, as she was reprimanded by my dad. So the only person nearby who could be Lily's guarantor was me. In cases of minor crimes, it's not uncommon for the suspects to be released the same day. However, for that to happen, a guarantor is often required. I'm not well versed in the law, but it seems that Lily's case falls under the same category. So there's only one answer. I responded cheerfully. Oh, I decline. Let them reflect on their actions in jail. With that, I gently hung up the phone. Later, Lily and John were summarily indicted and fined. However, they didn't have the money to pay. In the end, they had to beg my dad for a loan. Now, they're both working part-time jobs to repay that money. Meanwhile, James was severely reprimanded by the bank's upper management for bringing his personal troubles into the workplace. Although they were only given a warning, it's needless to say that the stares from others became cold. James couldn't bear the cold stares from those around him and eventually quit his job at the bank. However, finding a new job wasn't easy. Returning to his parents' home was also not an option. After all, the original cause of the trouble was his betrayal of me. Tad is furious about it. With no other options, James had to borrow money from shady sources. It's clear what happens next. James quickly became unable to repay his debt. He was taken by the debt collectors to a remote construction site in the mountains. He's likely still there today, working hard and sweating it out. As for me, I'm thriving in my new job. The salary might be lower than when I was a bank employee, but the work environment is pleasant and I feel fulfilled every day. One of the highlights is seeing Amy's second child. That's part of why I feel so content. Amy, can I visit you tomorrow?
Sure, but aren't you looking for a boyfriend?
Not right now. I'm not lying, but if I find the right person, I'd consider marriage. I won't let anyone ruin my life. Above all, I will seize my happiness by myself.